Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDRs, but hey, it's something. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because this is the spoopy month. There's really nothing spoopy in this episode, but what's going to be interesting, for those who don't know, is that the episodes that I release this month, not the podcast, I don't think the podcast, because it would be irrelevant to do it for the podcast, but the main series videos that I'm going to be releasing this month are going to be made, like they're going to be released at 12 a.m. to be spoopy. Also, I think I might premiere them. I don't know. You tell me if that's something you're interested in. With that out of the way, let's get right into the news. First, Guatemala update. You see, because the situation in Guatemala is not really looking like no good has been coming from it as of yet. And the most recent update is that policemen got into a scuffle with the Electoral Tribunal on Saturday. They got into a scuffle with the Electoral Court because the Electoral Court they had all the ballots for that election, and the police barged in and demanded all of the ballots for that election. And the Electoral Court was like the last place that people thought like had any form of legitimacy left in the situation, because they were the ones that were like, we certify the results, we don't see any issue with the results. But now the ballots are in the hands of the police, which many people say will probably lean more right-wing, which is probably going to do anything in its power to make sure that Bernardo Arevalo is delegitimized as the president of Guatemala. Hopefully this situation ends up still being good, although we'll have to wait and see. And again, I'm the only person in the indie media talking about this. Very interesting. Now let's talk about a foreign news story that people in left media have been talking about relentlessly. So, for those who don't know, well, I would assume a lot of you know at this point, there was a controversy in the Canadian Parliament. And this really makes me question the intelligence of a lot of the people who are in charge in elected offices, because this seems to happen a lot, and I'll explain what I mean in a second. So, here's what happened. The Canadian Parliament had a meeting where they invited President Zelensky to attend, because he did a meeting in America, and then he did a meeting in Canada, and, it was just part of a world tour to drum up support for the Ukrainian war. And the Speaker of the Canadian House of Commons, Anthony Rota, wanted to be very extra specially supportive of Zelensky. So one of the things that he decided to do was that he invited a person by the name of Yaroslav Hunka, a Ukrainian-Canadian citizen who was a veteran, and he was loading him and saying, this man is a great hero, he's done so much, blah, blah, blah. Again, trying to show, yeah, we love Ukraine. But what was interesting is that the man was 98 years old. Not that interesting. I mean, it's interesting that he managed to survive that long. But what is more interesting is the fact that as he was talking and explaining who he is, and the entire Canadian Parliament was cheering for him, one of the things he said was that he fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russian aggressors and continues to support the troops to this day. However, when this was being done, a lot of people started thinking, wait a second, and started crunching numbers 98 years old, fought against the Russians, Ukraine, and then it hit them, oh shit, is this guy an actual Nazi? And then it turns out, yes, he was a literal actual Nazi, serving in the Nazi military unit known as the 14 Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS. So, not even he was just a random soldier. It's no, he was a member of the SS, which is a little bit more than just being a run-of-the-mill draft person. This particular group being denounced by the Nuremberg trial as being a very bad troop in the army, who had committed a lot of war crimes and crimes against humanity. And Rota, completely embarrassed, resigned from his position in disgrace, and Justin Trudeau was oops, sorry. it is just a lot of people. Do people just not pay attention? Like, there are a lot of people who just do not pay attention to a lot of these things. The same thing happened with Jose Antonio Cast, where his father was known for a long period of time of being a German-born citizen who was around during Nazi Germany times and fled to his country of Chile. But it was only during the most recent presidential election that people finally put two and two together that he was a literal member of the Nazi Party. It is genuinely perplexing that this is still a thing that happens. But, whatever. This is not necessarily that surprising. People who were super ready to jump on the pro-Ukraine train, jumping on this trend. Anyways, next thing that is very interesting. The WGA ends their 148-day strike after reaching a tentative deal. So, the WGA strike is officially over for now. There is a chance they could potentially start up the strike once more, but very likely the deal has been made and it looks like everybody's going to be heading back to work. Now, you see, I was actually thinking that this strike was going to go on for a little longer, which is why I didn't plan a video of it this year, because I wanted to wait and see what would actually happen. But since the strike ended, I ended up writing a script for the WGA strike of this year. And I even put it to a vote asking my fans, would they rather me do this video or would they rather me do a video that I was already planning on releasing this year? I'm perfectly content with either or, and it looks like the schedule won't be changed, but it is interesting. I'll give you a little bit of a tease about what's going on in the video, because I have written down all of the deal, all the things about their tentative deal. So let's go over it. For those who don't remember what the strike was about, the strike was supposed to be about extending the current rights of writers to streaming services, because as of this moment, as of before the strike began, people, all the rules of the Writers Guild of America only applied to people who wrote for movies and TV, and not just that, live action movies and TV. So if you were writing for a streaming service show, it didn't matter. You had to negotiate on your own. They also wanted to make sure that AI was only used minimally, if at all, because there was worries that AI could replace writers in the future. They were to make sure that all productions hired a set minimum amount of writers, whether needed or not, as opposed to cutting costs by hiring less writers, and making sure that all writers got a pension and healthcare funds. Those were the big problems with the strike that they were trying to tackle, and here is the deal that they have reached. AI cannot create or alter literary content. It's not viewed as source material. Writers can opt to use AI, but it's not mandatory. Studios must inform writers if the materials provided involve artificial intelligence. The WGA can challenge AI's use of writers' content based on the agreement or the law. Minimums increase 5% on ratification, 4% on 5/2/2024, and 3.5% on 5/2/2025. Increase of 0.5% in the second year of their health and pension. The WGA can divert an additional 0.5% for health or pension. Enhanced contributions of writing teams. Guaranteed second step of screenwriter terms, faster payments, better rates for streaming features. Elevate foreign streaming residuals and viewership-based bonuses. High-budget programs get same comp as subscription streaming. Weekly pay hike and staffing provisions for series employment. Enhanced protections and $250K a year for showrunner training. Now, if you've been paying attention, you'll know that this isn't the only strike that has been going on in Hollywood. You see, thanks to the WGA strike, the SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild, also decided to go on strike, and the Screen Actors Guild are currently on strike right now. And there was currently a negotiation on whether or not video game writers would go on strike as well. And they even tried to negotiate with the Animation Guild to potentially get them to join in on the strike. But as of now, it's just the SAG-AFTRA. Now, at the end of the day, I think this strike was mostly beneficial to the entire industry itself. particularly the biggest studio that was affected by the strike. Take a wild guess which studio was affected the most by the strike. Hint, you know what it is without me even having to say it. It's Disney, with a total of 25 productions that relate to them being affected. 24 of them are actually Disney productions. That 25th one is the sequel to the Spider-Man movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So it's like tertiary related to them. So I count it anyways. And yeah, a majority of the things that were affected were Marvel projects. Although to be fair, there were some other things, including 4 Star Wars projects, Andor Season 2, Mandalorian Season 4, and 2 untitled Star Wars films, as well as a 3rd Tron movie that was apparently in the works. And it ended at various stages of production. Like, for example, Deadpool 3 managed to get some filming in before the strike ended. Meanwhile, Daredevil, like the upcoming Daredevil show, it had some filming done, but then the filming got cut pretty early on because that's when the SAG-AFTRA strike began. And many people were going crazy with what happened with Deadpool because due to the fact that Ryan Reynolds was a writer on Deadpool, he was not allowed to edit the script because, i.e., like do his ad-libbing, which he's well known for doing for the first 2 Deadpool movies, because that would involve a writer writing on the script. Because writers have to be on the set and change scripts whenever something happens. Like if an actor ad-libs a line and they're like, oh, this is better, they have to add that into the script. But here's the thing, even though all these projects were affected, and you might think this might have hurt Disney, I think at the end of the day this might actually help Disney. Because if you've been paying attention online, you'll know that a lot of these products that they were involved with, particularly the Marvel and Star Wars franchises, a lot of people were saying that those 2 were running out of steam by this point. Like, many people were not really that enthused with the most recent season of The Mandalorian, like the most recent Star Wars stuff, you know, Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi. People were not necessarily that enthused. The most recent Marvel films, people have been saying that Phase 4 is the first Marvel L. Like, people were genuinely running out of steam on the franchises. But then, those franchises basically went on hold for a little bit because they couldn't continue. All they could do was publish the stuff that they already had. They couldn't make anything new until all this was going down. So I think this breather might have been good for the writers, might have been good for Disney itself, because they weren't like... The problem with a lot of these franchises and projects is that they keep getting shot out so fast that people don't have time to breathe. Matt Pat explained it in a film theory where it was like the first 2 phases of the MCU were so far spaced, like in between the movies and in between like the phase itself. They didn't have that much content in the first 2 phases. Phase 3, it was like a little bit mixed, but then Phase 4, they just shot out like a ton of shows, a ton of stuff that a lot of people just either don't care about or just don't really like find it interesting. Like, for example, I haven't watched that much of Phase 4 because I'm genuinely not interested on a lot of the projects that they are releasing. Now, some of that isn't necessarily the fault of the problem is they're introducing a bunch of new IP, and a lot of the new IP I'm just not that interested in. But also, some of the existing IP I'm also not interested in. And I mean, I'm actually one of the rare cases because I don't watch a lot of the MCU. I watch the ones that I want to watch. Like me, if I showed you all of the Marvel productions that I have seen, like not even based on quality, like just the ones I have seen, you would be perplexed because there's a ton of stuff that I didn't see. You know how many Thor movies I've seen? 1, and that was the most recent one. Wanna know how many Ant-Man films I've seen? 1, the most recent one. Want to know how many Iron Man movies I've seen? 2. 1 and 2. I never saw 3. I wasn't interested in 3. Want to know how many Captain America movies I've seen? 2. 2 and 3. And, not in that order, I watched 3 first and then 2. I've never seen the Eternals. I never saw Captain Marvel. I didn't see the first Black Panther. I saw the second one. I didn't see Loki. I did see She-Hulk. I did see Miss Marvel. Didn't see What If, saw Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Secret Invasion, the thing that many people regard as like the worst of the most recent Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff. I only saw the first episode because I was like, I'll give it a chance. I'll watch the first episode, see if it's good. And this thing, I didn't know any of this stuff going on. I didn't watch much Marvel, so I didn't know anything about what the Skrulls were up to. I knew, like, what one of the Skrull characters was, because I saw the post-credits scene in the second Spider-Man movie, but I didn't really care about anything else that was going on. I knew Fury, I knew Maria Hill, and I knew who Tarlok was, and I was like, I'm interested, and I'm also interested to see Rhodey again. Then in the first episode, they fridge Maria Hill, and I'm just like, I'm not interested anymore. Marvel is unfortunately doing a lot of the things that the DCAU failed at in the beginning, because they were so ready to just get to Marvel, like get to where Marvel was, that they just sped through the first part, and everybody was just like, uh-oh, the problem is you sped through so many movies that now you can't make movies about these things anymore. And now the MCU is facing those same problems. Like, since they wasted Secret Invasion on this, when Secret Invasion should have been what was building up for the next couple of years. Or they could have saved it for a future potential thing. Anyways, we're getting way off topic, so let's move on to the next thing. Dianne Feinstein is dead. No surprises there. Like, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's just like, genuinely, I'm not surprised. I don't know what's going to happen. A lot of people are still trying to bring up the whole, like, Gavin Newsom appointment thing, but honestly, I don't know, or I don't really care. It doesn't really matter. Feinstein's dead. And there's even some debate about, like, whether or not, like, the Republicans might try to stop judicial appointments. Like, they're like, is this the chance, like, the GOP is just going to stop judicial appointments during the Biden administration? It's like, see, that was the problem. This was stuff that you all should have been preparing for. But the Democrats don't prepare for this kind of stuff because, like, they're really inept. Like, a lot of people, even to the point where it's like, are they even inept, or are they just genuinely, like, actually trying to hurt people? I don't know. It doesn't really matter, because either way, the same results happen. So it's just like, I mean, again, it doesn't really matter if they're intentionally doing this or not. This was literally the only way this was going to end. Everybody knew this, but nobody wanted to acknowledge it. Anyways, let's just move on to the next story. I was originally going to talk about the FCC net neutrality thing, but I mean, W and Humanist Report already did it, so since the majority of you probably already watched the Humanist Report, I'm just going to cover this instead. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is reportedly planning to flip his bid and campaign as an independent in the upcoming election. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. reportedly intends to leave behind the party closely tied with his family name and run as an independent in 2024. According to Mediate, Kennedy will make the announcement on October 9th in Philadelphia, along with attack ads against the Democratic National Committee. A campaign insider told the outlet of the DNC is changing the rules to exclude his candidacy following his promotion of fringe conspiracy theories and anti-vaccine views. This may not come as a surprise, as he had made it public that he would keep his options open with a third-party challenge to President Joe Biden. The New York Times reported last week that he privately met with Angela McArdle, the chair of the Libertarian Party, at a Memphis conference in July. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people have been saying a lot of different things about this. Some are trying to compare Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to Jill Stein or Cornel West. Some are saying that he is a lot more like Ross Perot, with the idea claiming that he's actually going to try and steal more votes away from the Republicans. But you see, this is the biggest thing that a lot of people don't really seem to understand. Like, first of all, this is essentially kind of confirming the whole theory that he is basically Republican AstroTurf. You see, because, look, it's clear, like, from the way the campaign has been run, at least on paper, it's clear that this is just Republican AstroTurf. Kennedy brings his name into the field, runs as a Democrat for a couple of months, then has this big stink about, like, Biden's not being fair to me, and then flips to the general election and runs as an independent. You can see why on paper that seems like a viable strategy. Like, he's literally trying to take away people from voting for the Democrats. Like, he's trying to get a base in the Democratic Party and then leave with that base to the general election. But there was one huge problem with that. First of all, nobody knew who Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was, aside from the fact that he is the son of Robert F. Kennedy. That's literally all they knew about him. That's literally all they knew about him. That he was the son of RFK. That was literally all they knew about him. But then he starts spouting his anti-vaccine views. Then he starts basically using his entire other platform for platitudes. And at this point of the stage, like many people do say, like, oh, but look at this poll. Biden's at 57% among Democrats. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. 25%. It's like, look, it's 2023. Granted, it's late 2023, but it's 2023. The fact of the matter is, a lot of people are still basically going off name recognition alone. When you look at aggregate polls, he does again fine, but it's like massive leads. Like, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, people are saying like, oh, he has this big range of support, but it's like, this is literally, he mostly gets low double digits or high single digits. Like, he doesn't get that many people supporting him. The thing is, a lot of people say, look at the poll. Like, if you poll the people who say that if they want like another option who isn't Joe Biden, then that number is really high. It's like, okay, sure. But the fact of the matter is, their two options are RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson. No other big name is running. No other big name is going to run. So it's an irrelevant question. Sure, I would assume a lot of them would want someone else to run, but they're not going to actually support anybody else because it doesn't matter. There's no one else who's going to run. Like, it's a non-issue. Like, it's the same thing with a lot of these other polls. Like, some people say, like, oh, but, like, what if hypothetically this person was in the race or this person in the race? It's like, that is an irrelevant question. It doesn't matter. What matters is who is in the race. And who is in the race is Biden, Kennedy, Williamson, and a bunch of other, like, small no-name candidates. Those are the people that are running. And a lot of people are trying to say, like, oh, well, this means that Biden is losing support because Kennedy, it's like, he's not losing support because everybody who supports RFK Jr. is not supporting Joe Biden. And not just that, they're never going to support Joe Biden. Like, let's look at RFK Jr.'s endorsements. Like, let's ignore the polls, because a lot of people, like, on one end they say, ignore the polls. But then on the other end, whenever it's a poll that says that Biden is doing bad, all of a sudden they need to pay attention extra to the polls. Convenient. But let's look at the people who actually who are doing more than just saying in a random poll, oh, I might support this guy. People who should know who he is, have done research into who he is, and can actually explain who the heck RFK Jr. is. Let's look at them. Okay, so here are the people who are actually supporting RFK Jr. Joe Rogan, Alicia Silverstone, Rob Schneider, David Sachs, Abby Rockefeller, Chaman Palithapa, Timothy Mellon, Omid Malik, Cheryl Hines, Mark Gorton, Jack Dorsey, Eric Clapton, Gavin DeBaker, James F. Gennaro, Dennis Kucinich, and Catherine Austin Fitts. Okay, a majority of these people are just flat out conservative Republicans. Catherine Fitts is a Republican. Gavin Baker is a millionaire who's donated to Republicans in the past. Eric Clapton literally did a speech where he said for immigrants to get out of Britain. Jack Dorsey has donated to right-wing Democrats like Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang. Omid Malik and David Sachs are co-endorsing him with Ron DeSantis. Rob Schneider's a conservative. Joe Rogan, very right-wing views on a lot of social issues. Like, none of these people were going to support Joe Biden anyways. The closest ones that are, like, even remotely, like, in the left of center field are Alicia Silverstone and Dennis Kucinich. And even then, it's like, really? I don't think they're going to be supporting Biden regardless. Like, these are people, they're not supporting Biden. Ergo, like, he's a non-issue. All of the people who were legitimately looking at Robert F. Kennedy Jr., looking at his platform and saying, I want to vote for this man, they were not going to back Biden regardless. So Biden doesn't lose support. Now, a lot of people are also saying, like, oh, well, what if he's taking away more Trump support? It's like, that's a non-issue either. The people who love Trump, they're not going to vote for anybody else. They want Trump's dick in their mouth. That's what they want. Nobody else is going to fill that hole until Trump is dead. So again, also a non-issue. Like, I don't think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to get any, like, he's not really going to get any support in the general election. I don't think he's going to even stay into the general election. because he's going to realize that he has no route to any sort of success. The only thing that I can legitimately think of this is just RFK Jr. is trying to distance himself from the Democratic Party to position himself to be Trump's running mate. That's all he's doing. I wouldn't be surprised if his announcement isn't even a general election run, if it is literally just him announcing that he's going to join the Republicans, or he's going to try and run as Trump's VP. A scary notion, but a notion nonetheless. Speaking of other presidential non-issues, Cenk is trying to get in the news again, and I'm going to give him coverage. I'm going to give him the attention that he so desperately wants. Cenk is frustrated by Biden's lagging poll numbers and says that he's staffing up for a 2024 run. This is so irrelevant and so nonsense that literally under no circumstance is this even remotely going to happen. He lost. He got 4th place in a congressional seat. That's one big reason why he won't run. Another one is that he is constitutionally ineligible to become president, so that's another reason why people say he might not run. But he technically can run. He just can't take the office if he wins, which is a non-issue. And another thing that is interesting is that many people say that this might actually tie into what Nina Turner's been teasing for 15 months now. A chance that she's co-chairing or whatever to this presidential bid, which is going to be a huge disappointment one way or the other. Be ready for me to do the Nina Turner cancel post, because it's just legitimately, I don't really, I'm kind of getting tired of Nina Turner. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's just Nina's just been grating, saying positive things about a ton of bad figures like Brianna Joy Gray and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Marianne Williamson, and literally for 15 months been I'm teasing something really big, which at this point, considering the amount of teasing that she's doing, I honestly can't see it as anything less than her running for an office, which would be a terrible idea no matter what office she chooses to run for. Whether it be president, whether it be Congress, whether it be Senate, whether it be for as a Democrat or as any other thing, legitimately, I don't think that she shouldn't. But anyways, this is supposed to be about Cenk. I don't really care. It's a relevant issue. He's just doing it for media coverage. And another reason why this is irrelevant is because of the last story, where a big bombshell was just released, which I technically covered in the last year, because he said something very similar in the last cycle, but Ralph Nader has stated that he is going to be supporting Joe Biden. I know the difference between fascism and autocracy. In an interview with the Washington Post released Monday, former Green Party presidential candidate Ralph Nader said that he is supporting President Biden's 2024 re-election bid. Nader made it pretty clear that he won't be formally endorsing Biden, still supports third parties in principle, and personally praises likely Green Party 2024 nominee Cornel West, cringe, but he has little hope for the party's chances as a whole in the upcoming election. I know the difference between fascism and the autocracy. And I'll take autocracy anytime, Nader said in a telephone interview with the Post. Fascism is what the GOP is the architecture of, and autocracy is what the Democrats are practitioners of. But autocracy leaves an opening. They don't suppress votes. They don't suppress free speech. And unfortunately, people are taking the wrong message of this situation. Like I said the last time, Nader is one of the people that when they are saying that you need to support the Democrats and support Joe Biden's bid for 2024, you need to be serious about it. When even people like him are acknowledging that this is the only option for the future, then you need to take that option now. I'm one of those people, you know me. You've been paying attention to this channel for 5 years or for however long you've been here, and you should know that if I'm saying one thing, then that is definitely the thing that you should be heeding at this particular moment in time. Official announcement on that front coming soon. With all that out of the way, let's move on to the main topic of this video. I guess this is a main topic. So, this is this is the second time that I'm doing a international, I guess. I was going to say this is the first one that I've been doing for a foreign one, but I remembered that I did one for Morena, so yeah, this is just going to be another interesting one. Okay, so for this episode, I'm doing my problems with the Sao Paulo Forum. For those who don't know what the Sao Paulo Forum is, let me explain. The Sao Paulo Forum, or the Foro de Sao Paulo, is a yearly conference/alliance of Latin American leftist parties created by the Workers' Party of Brazil in 1990. It has been an organization vital for the Pink Tide by helping organize left-of-center parties together to discuss strategy and build solidarity. Like most political internationals, its power is relatively limited. Actual on-the-ground stuff is done via the ALBA, a group that strengthens trade among Latin American leftist nations, or even COPAL, a more generic Latin American, international. But it has been somewhat influential in helping strengthen solidarity with Latin American leftists. But despite its power being very limited, the Forum is still heavily demonized by the Latin American right, to the point where there are many conspiracies surrounding the group, usually revolving around them trying to form some new world order, taking Latin America over with communism, that Soros funds the group, that they have ties to the Pope and Satan and Democrats and pedophiles, whatever. In fact, in the most recent Ecuadorian election, there was a conspiracy theory that Rafael Correa had used his ties to the Forum of São Paulo to have a prime right-wing opposition candidate be assassinated. But don't worry, those are the extreme fringe theories. There is a softer version, a softer, more palatable and accepted version of the theory, that the group has a hand in every form of discontent in Latin American nations, and that all protests against neoliberal leaders are caused by the org, and that leftist candidates are essentially funded by the organization. I talked about it a little bit in my Mexican presidential election series, where I mentioned how AMLO was theorized to be taking money from Hugo Chavez, and that Chavez was sending people to go deal with him, and that in the 2012 election, that the Yo Soy 132 movement was actually a astroturf by leftist groups. And this is a thing that you're going to be seeing a lot, if you look into any Latin American political scene. They always get tied to Chavez, Maduro, or whatever else, usually via their affiliation with the Foro de Sao Paulo. Sometimes the affiliation isn't even there, and they get called that way anyways. For example, in the 2018 Brazilian presidential election, there was a debate that was held between some of the top contenders, and one of the more fringe right-wing candidates, Cabo Daciolo, was in a debate with a couple of the other mainstream candidates. And one of them was Ciro Gomes. And during the debate, Cabo was very, very mad at Ciro Gomes, and even went so far as to say, hey, buddy, I have a question for you. So, why did you form the Foro de Sao Paulo, and why are you trying to form the Union of Socialist Republics of Latin America, and why are you trying to destroy our sovereignty? Now, for those who don't know what that is all about, apparently what I said, the Union of Latin America, the Union of Socialist Republics of Latin America, that was a joke that was made by a right-wing pundit to criticize PT and the Foro de Sao Paulo, because during one of the meetings of the Foro de Sao Paulo, Lula said that he was opposing the free trade agreement with Latin America, claiming that it would be taking away Latin American sovereignty and then giving it to the United States. And they said, well, what would the Union of Socialist Republics be with Lula and Chavez in charge? Basically trying to do a reverse. And a lot of people, a lot of people on the right, because the right-wingers are just stupid, they took a joke and then turned it into an actual thing. And this happens all the time. I remember, there are some people on the right who legitimately believe that the government has a weather machine, even though that was literally made as a joke in a fake paper. But despite that, now there are a lot of people who genuinely believe that. The same thing with the flat earth stuff. Some people made jokes with the flat earth, and now people genuinely believe that there is a flat earth. And what's even funnier is that Ciro Gomes wasn't even a founding member of the Foro de Sao Paulo. See, that's how weird the conspiracy theory is. People who have no affiliation with the group get to be blamed for being one of the founders of the group. That's how insane the conspiracy theories are, especially in Latin America. Because in Latin America, people think that fake news is a big thing in the United States. Yeah, well, in Latin America, fake news is everywhere. You literally can't go anywhere without... I've said this before. I follow a ton of Latin American politicians on Twitter And almost every day, one of their tweets is them taking a picture that was from Telegram or WhatsApp. Well, particularly, it's mostly WhatsApp, but they're taking like this picture from WhatsApp, and then they have the word falso written on it because it's a fake thing that someone is spreading about them. And a lot of their pundits just go along with right-wing conspiracy theories and whatever. Or left-wing ones, sometimes it's left-wing ones, but for the most part it's right-wing ones. This essentially just serves to be a perpetual boogeyman for the Latin American right-wing. But despite this, the Forum of São Paulo goes really strong. Currently, of all of the countries in Latin America, of the 20 countries of Latin America, they have 12 affiliated governments. They also have St. Lucia, which isn't technically Latin America, but it's still in that general area, so it's like a little bit mixed. And the only countries in Latin America that a member of the Forum of São Paulo hasn't ruled is Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Haiti. Now, that's not to say that the pink tide hasn't hit those three countries, mind you. It's just there's a little bit of conflict. Like you see, Haiti and Costa Rica have leaders that people say might qualify as the pink tide, and some say don't qualify as the pink tide. Like in Costa Rica, for a while they were run by the Citizen Action Party, which is a center-left party, but it's in that area of center-left politics that's technically they're still social liberals. And Haiti, there was a debate because some people don't necessarily consider Haiti as a member of Latin America for racial reasons. Guatemala, however, it did have a left-wing leader that has been considered part of the pink tide, Alvaro Colom. And even if you don't count him, a lot of people are counting Bernardo Arevalo, so it doesn't really matter either way. But anyways, let's just get into the problems, because I do have some problems. I'll be honest, this one is a little bit more of a lax episode, because, from what I've gathered, Forum of São Paulo is fine, but it's like most political internationals. It's essentially like a club. And I would genuinely like it if they did a little more. If they're going to get blamed for pushing leftist candidates in other nation, at this point, why not? It might help leftist parties that just can't really get off the ground. It's really good. It's really good. It would encourage a lot of solidarity in the Latin American left. It might eventually push for the Patria Grande that they so desperately want. But I do understand why that necessarily can't work, because you see, the fact of the matter is, a lot of the parties in the Forum of São Paulo didn't even necessarily like each other that much, and that's because the Forum of São Paulo is one that they have a little bit of an open net. Due to the fact that it is not that formal, any left-wing party in the area can join in and join in the discussion, just going to try and get into the discourse, which has led to a lot of problems. For example, they have post-statist parties in the group. Even though post-statist parties are nowhere near serious, they're still in the group. You can't really fault them for, again, the whole point is to allow any left-wing party the ability to speak their mind and join in and get some advice and whatever. So you can't blame them too much, but you can blame them a little bit. Another issue that comes from this is that some countries have multiple parties in the group, even as they oppose each other. Here are some examples. In Brazil, PT and PDT are members of the group. Venezuela has PSUV and the Communist Party in there. The Dominican Republic has the Modern Revolutionary Party and the Dominican Liberation Party. And Mexico has the PRD, Morena, and PT as members. When again, at this point, some of these guys probably should have been kicked out. Speaking of kicking out, at this point, they should really kick out the Sandinistas. There was this controversy because FARC, the FARC group in Colombia, was a member of the group briefly, but then they were kicked out because they were considered too controversial. At this point, I think the Sandinistas has earned the ability to be kicked out of the group for being too controversial. And the biggest problem is that they haven't let DSA in yet. I don't know why they're holding up on that. This is, again, the thing. Any, left-wing political party in Latin America can enter the group. And that has happened. Some members, if you go to the Spanish Wikipedia article, they say that the United States Green Party is technically a member because they joined the Forum of São Paulo during one of their meetings. But DSA, the largest socialist group in the United States, still is not a member, even though they've been trying to join for a while now. Now, if you've seen my episode on Socialist International, I think you can kind of see why they're a little bit hesitant to have them in, because they used to be a member of the Socialist International, which was very, very, very strange in a lot of their relations with a lot of countries within Latin America. But I think that they should give DSA a chance. Let them in. And at this point, there ain't much else to say. Four de Sao Paulo's been pretty good thus far. So, yeah. This is around the time the year's ending, so of course Steam's running out on this channel. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell to notify when a future video of mine comes out. And if you want more content from me, you can go to our website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or consider supporting me on Patreon.